Welcome to episode 4 of Friends in Film, a podcast hosted by myself, Cooper Hood, at Coop Soups on Twitter. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Josh Straley at Straley Strong on Twitter. Friends in Film is a podcast where both of us talk about the latest movie news and theatrical releases. If you would like to, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at Friends and Film. You can subscribe to us on SoundCloud at Friends and Film, on YouTube at Friends and Film, and also we are brand new on iTunes at Friends and Film as well. So if you're listening on iTunes, or if you want to take us with us, or if you want to take us with you on the go, you can subscribe to us on there, give us a good review, just help us build a following on there and show up on new podcast lists and so on. But Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you? Oh, and also, welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm a little nervous because in about an hour and a half when we're recording, currently on a Sunday, my Steelers play a playoff game. Ooh. And against the Broncos without Antonio Brown and D'Angelo Williams, and our quarterback's banged up. So I'm a little nervous that our season's going to end today, but still holding out hope.
Do they have the magic for another win? That's the question.
That is the question. But I don't know if they do. I'm hoping so. But this will distract me until game time. So,
little known fact: I am a closet Broncos fan.
Oh wow! So we got a little rivalry going on here in studio. All right. On today's episode, instead of reviewing a movie like we have in the past, we will be discussing the Oscar nominations that came out on Thursday morning. So, but before we do that, we're going to talk about some movie news. And similar to last week, we actually had quite a bit come out this week. And the first one is pretty big, and I know it seems like every single week we're talking about Star Wars, and this one we're going to lead off with Star Wars again.
It's the most important subject in the world of cinema.
I mean, it's hard to argue that. So this week, Variety shot first, pun intended, by releasing a list of the final 8 contenders to play a young Han Solo in the upcoming Han Solo movie. Those actors are Miles Teller, Ansel Elgort, Dave Franco, Jack Rayner, Scott Eastwood, Logan Lerman, Emery Cohen, and Blake Jenner. In the report, they also mentioned that whichever one of these men are cast in the role, they could make their first appearance as Han Solo in the upcoming Rogue One film. So,
how does that work?
Yeah, I don't know. But which one of these would you like to see play a young Han Solo?
Honestly, none of them. But if I have to pick from that list, I really like Dave Franco and Jack Rayner. Those are my 2 favorites. I think Dave Franco can bring that sarcasm and the fun aspects of Han Solo, the character, into the film really well. And he's worked with Phil Lord before on the 22 and 21 Jump Street movies. So if I had to pick one of those guys, those would be my choices.
Yeah, that's a good connection with Franco. Because I forgot about that they'd worked with them before. But I also, weirdly enough, I've heard a lot of people say that Dave Franco's like the weirdest choice. But for some reason, every time his name gets brought up, I'm kind of like, yeah, I can see that happening.
He doesn't remind me of Han Solo. Or not that he needs to, but you look at him, you don't think, bam, Han Solo, 30 years before, you think, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and that's kind of the most important thing with this is they got to get somebody who is a good enough actor to play the role, but somebody that's not too big. Whereas you'll see them be like, oh, that's Mr. Fantastic from Fantastic Four playing Han Solo, like. Mm-hmm. I kind of want them to go, I haven't seen anything with Emery Cohen or Blake Jenner as far as I can remember. So I kind of want to see them go that route just because, to me, they would be the young Han Solo then. I wouldn't go into it thinking, oh, how is this character going to be, how is this guy who played this character going to be able to switch things up and play Han Solo?
Oh, yeah. I think Emery Cohen is in the Brooklyn film.
Yeah.
He's the male lead or the male love interest.
Yeah, which I've yet to see, but maybe we'll. Blake Jenner's primarily from Glee, and I've never watched Glee, so
never seen an episode a day in my life.
Yeah, what do you think about him popping up in Rogue One, though?
I don't know how he's going to tie into it. I mean, I guess if they have to go to, like, some smuggler's moon, or maybe the Han Solo character's got an Imperial past and he's like a recruit that they let live, maybe. I don't know. I get that you want to have Easter eggs and, nods, but I don't want to see Star Wars turn into, like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe where there's all these, winks and nods and, oh, this relates to this further down the line type deal.
I can understand that. I think the one thing for me, if this is in fact true and Han Solo does appear in Rogue One, if Felicity Jones and her team are trying to figure out a way to steal the Death Star plans, if they're looking for other potential members, and then they're like in the cantina or something looking for other fighters, and then Han Solo is just like chilling there, and then they're like, hey, do you want to, like, he's like, no. So, all right.
Yeah, it would be perfect. It would be a good segue into his past.
Yeah. We talked about enough of that, I think. So we're going to move on to the Creed sequel, which Creed for me was one of my favorite movies of this past year. And now, according to Variety, Creed 2 they're hoping for it to hit theaters November 2017. So, Josh, are you ready for more Adonis Creed?
Oh, absolutely. We saw this movie together, and I think we both came away liking it. Really impressed by the performances of Washington and Sylvester Stallone.
Michael B. Jordan,
sorry. So they haven't really talked too much about what they're going to do, definitely. So Stallone's been passing around those rumors about, or not rumors, but ideas of where they could go. But I mean, I'm already on board for it. It's the Rocky films of our time, and just be really curious to see who they get to take the film in the next direction.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. A lot of our stories this week tie into what we talked about last week. So we were talking about whether or not Ryan Coogler would return, and we'll get to in a little bit, but he's not going to be returning for the Creed sequel. So for me, Creed was a great movie, and I think Ryan Coogler did a great job directing it. So they got to find somebody who can bring that same type of energy and fresh look on the franchise and keep the same style that Coogler made in that first movie, because, I mean, I think it's his second fight that he has in the movie. It's basically a single shot. They did a single take. I mean, that was an incredible thing to watch, and especially looking at how they did behind the scenes. You can find videos of that online. Is something I really enjoyed about the movie. So I want another Creed movie, but how excited I am for it will really depend on who they get to direct it.
Do you have any dark horses for who you think, who like in your wildest dreams, who would direct this movie?
My wildest dreams. I don't know. I just watched Training Day yesterday, or maybe 2 days ago, and that's directed by Antoine Fuqua.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure. I'll double check real quick.
It's funny you mentioned that, though. I did watch Training Day the other day, and that is why I have Washington on the mind. Yeah.
Yeah, Antoine Fuqua directed that, and there's some good action sequences in the movie, especially near the end. So I think he would be an interesting director to take the franchise going forward. But I mean, I don't think it has to be a black director for this project. It can be just whoever gives the best idea, and I'm hoping Coogler at least writes the movie and writes the script. So then that flavor will still be there.
Yeah, it
But
helps.
then whoever comes on board to direct it is just somebody that the best person for the job, no matter if they're black or white or whatever their ethnicity is.
Just helps the film continue the same type of atmosphere. And it just really felt 21st century to me. I mean, modern.
Yeah.
But as you say, Ryan Coogler, who I need to apologize to, I believe multiple times last episode I called him Ryan Googler. But we mentioned that he was rumored to be in talks for Black Panther. But you can now definitively say today that he is confirmed to direct.
Yeah, Marvel made the announcement this week that he's officially on board to direct, which is something I'm super excited about. He had been rumored for a while, and especially after seeing Creed, and I saw Fruitvale Station earlier last year. So when his name first came up, it was before Creed had hit theaters, and I was really excited about the possibility of him directing it. And Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther he's a great actor, and I can't wait to see him debut in Captain America: Civil War in a few months. But having Coogler on board makes me even more excited for the project.
Can you imagine the fight scenes that are going to take place in that film, Black Panther? Because Coogler is going to take that over to Black Panther, and my head is beaming or breaming with all the possibilities that are going to be in store for us to see stylized action in whatever form it takes. But I'm just sure it's going to be great.
Yeah, the one thing that's weird about it is I'm very much a fan of Chadwick Boseman playing the role, but after seeing Coogler's first two projects with Michael B. Jordan and the performance he's gotten out of him, I kind of wish that they had gotten Michael B. Jordan to play Black Panther. But at the same time, I'm sure Coogler's going to be able to get a great performance out of Boseman. And as we were talking about with Creed, I don't think it's important for Creed to have a black director necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But for this one, it was just to get the Wakanda, which is the fictional country that Black Panther's from in Africa, to get that heritage down right. I think it's important that they have a black director, and Ryan Coogler is in fact black. So hopefully him working with Marvel and the other writers and stuff will be able to bring something really unique to the MCU.
Yeah, definitely. Diversity anywhere you can find it, especially in Hollywood, is great for everybody.
Yeah, it's a good amount of talk about Creed.
Sure.
And Ryan Coogler.
So we have a director jumping on board a project, but what about directors jumping off of projects?
Yeah, so
segue.
Yeah, great segue there, Josh. You're really getting better at this stuff. So Deadline reported that director Juan Antonio Bayona has bolted from the World War Z 2 movie. So that movie's now looking for a director. Brad Pitt is scheduled to return as the lead. Were you a fan of the first World War Z, and what are you thinking about the sequel?
I was a huge fan. It popped out during when zombie hysteria was at its point. Walking Dead was where I was 9 p.m. every Sunday, and in the summer I was refreshing myself on the entire series. And then World War Z pops in, and it's oh, absolutely. They did it so well. They gave you so many aspects of what a zombie outbreak could be and a potential cure. And as soon as the film ended, I was oh man, are they already talking about the second one? I hope this movie does well so they make a second one. And I think Pitt, maybe 2 weeks after the film comes out, says they've got ideas. And I really hope this stumbling block doesn't derail the film for 2017, because that would be really disappointing to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure when it's supposed to start filming, but from what it sounds, I don't think it has a set 2017 release date either. I could be wrong.
Don't quote me on where I read this, but I believe it was, I want to say Collider or Deadline said that the studio is pushing for a June 6th or June 9th release date for 2017 to be that summer blockbuster.
Okay, if that's the case, I know the first World War Z went through a lot of stuff in post-production where they had to basically reshoot the entire movie. So
I know the final act was rewritten after production, and then
they screened it, and then the execs were very unhappy with it, and so was the cast and the director. So they scrapped it. They reshot a bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. So now, if they want a June 2017 release date, just to be safe for them, I'm guessing they'd want to be in production by May of this year at the latest, I would assume. Most movies, if you have a year for, as long as pre-production's good to film it and hammer it out in post, that's a pretty good time frame. So, I mean, it's really going to depend on who they get to direct the sequel. Um, it's never good when you lose a director to a project. So they got to figure out somebody quick and get the right person, and hopefully it can stay on track for a 2017 release date.
I wonder if Brad Pitt will just say screw it and direct it himself.
Maybe he'll just maybe he'll get his wife, get Angelina to direct it.
She did a really good job with Unbroken.
Unbroken, yeah.
Yeah, so that's always a possibility.
Yeah, another director that we thought was leaving a project, but he's actually not, was George Miller, who did Mad Max Fury Road earlier this year. And then he was quoted in an article on Page 6, which is it's a magazine website, that he will not be coming back to the franchise because of how long the production took for the first one. But then he received an Oscar nomination. I mean, we'll get to it in a little bit, but when he did so, he talked to The Wrap about it, and he confirmed that he said he was misinterpreted the way that quote was handled, and that he does plan to come back to the franchise and maybe do that Furiosa movie we talked about last week. What do you think about George Miller come back? Or
all right, well, I think I already outed myself. I have not seen Mad Max. I haven't seen any of them. But I mean, this is the guy's baby, and I mean, after you do so much work into it, I mean, obviously he wants to get to new things, so maybe that's why he said what he said. But then, obviously, getting an Oscar nom, I mean, immediately you want to say, oh well, maybe I'm coming back, guys, to give some hope for fans. But do you think the series would be missing something if George Miller wasn't a part of the next Mad Max?
I think so. I mean, the way Mad Max Fury Road was handled and shot, and visually it was incredible to watch. Just the huge landscapes and the giant road chases. It was one of the most fun viewing experience I had this year, even though I saw it by myself because mixed up with some friends communication wise, but it was still a pleasure to watch and one of my favorite movies of the year.
How did that happen?
We were trying to figure out a showing to go to, and then I'm trying to think how it happened. I thought he had said we were going to the Carmike up at Jefferson Point in Indiana, and then he actually had said that they wanted to go to Regal.
Yeah.
So I went up there, and they were like the same show. The showings were like 5 minutes apart. So I got up there, and I was like, oh, there's no showing at 10:50 or whatever it was. There was a 10:45. I was like, he must have just gotten it wrong. And so I was like, just take a ticket. And then I'm like texting him, like, okay, I'm sitting here. He's like, I'm sitting in the theater. I was like, what? I was like,
this theater is empty.
And then I scroll up the text, and it's Regal, not Carmike. I was like, crap. I was like, well, I'm just gonna sit here and watch it by myself. But it was still great.
Yeah, sure.
Basically, the complete opposite of Mad Max is Mad Max is a hard R adult adventure to a kid's adventure, primarily. Chronicles of Narnia, something we both had watched growing up.
Absolutely.
They did 3 movies before, earlier this year, or not this year, earlier
this century.
The century. There's still 2000s. But now, producer Mark Gordon told Collider that we're going to get more Chronicles of Narnia movies in the very near future. He said, we're hoping to be able to make the movie very shortly. We're very excited about it. And then he also said that it's going to be a complete reboot, totally new franchise, new characters, directors, crew, everything, new timeline. Are you excited to go back to Narnia and explore all these crazy adventures?
It kind of depends. I think I'm really anxious to see the stories that I've read come to life, but I don't know if I'm going to be like campaigning outside the theater, all day waiting for this film.
I doubt it.
I mean, the series has been really fun to watch. I mean, like you said, growing up, of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader were all really great and fun. But the stories have kind of gotten old on me. So if what Mark Gordon said was correct, and they're going to use a lot of originality and try to bring new life into the whole franchise. I'm all for that. I don't think that's a problem. I mean, I don't know if you've read any of the books or, have that emotional attachment to like the original C.S. Lewis stories. But
I've read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe back in elementary school, and then I tried to read the very last one just because I heard that was the best one, but I was like 11 at the time probably, and I just could never get through it. But I've seen the first 3 movies they made, and from what I can remember, I enjoyed watching them as a child. I don't think they would hold up probably, seeing them now, but I mean, Aslan was a great character, and seeing him with the technology. I mean, looking at the Jungle Book and how great that looks. If they can get that type of visuals with Chronicles of Narnia and they get a good young cast to go around it, I think that it'll be a big money maker.
Are these films still with Fox, or did they switch hands again?
That is an excellent question.
Because Disney did the first 2, and then they dropped them, and then that's when Fox picked up the rights. And then Fox was a one and done with Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and I want to say Lionsgate, but that doesn't sound right.
I don't know. I mean, rights issues they're different with each case. So there's no set. A lot of them you have to be in production every X amount of years. So I'm trying to remember when the Voyage of the Dawn Treader came out. I think like 2006 or something like that. It was probably the last one that they did. So it's been 10 years. Wow. 10 years since the last Chronicles of Narnia movie, or somewhere around there. It's been nearly a decade. So I would assume that whatever rights, if there was an X amount of time, that I'm guessing it probably reverted. But it could be something where whatever company has them just has them permanently. So I'm not sure. I don't know. If it was with Disney, I think my expectations would be very high for the franchise, just because of how good Disney does making, family-friendly movies and environments and stuff. But I mean, if it was with Fox or Lionsgate, whatever, it wouldn't really change that much of my, what I expect from the franchise.
Sure.
One movie that my expectations are changing for is Batman v Superman. Just like with Star Wars, I feel like we're talking about this movie every week, but probably unlike with Star Wars, we're not talking about it very positively, I feel like, most of the time, which is a shame because I am excited for the movie.
Yeah, it's gonna set up a whole new universe, so I mean there's a lot riding on it.
Yeah, so this next piece is potentially a huge spoiler for Batman v Superman, but who knows? They could show it in their marketing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really know, just on how they've been doing things so far. So if you don't want to know about how the potential ending for Batman v Superman, I would advise you to skip ahead a few minutes. I don't know how long we're gonna ramble about this, but hope we can't spend much time on it just because we have other things to get to. But if you're still with us, I'm gonna give you about 2 seconds left before we go into spoilers for it.
1, 2.
So Latino Review reported that at the end, or near the end of not Justice League, sorry, of Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, which might as well call it the first Justice League movie, I guess, that near the end of it, Bizarro is going to appear. And for those of you who are not familiar, Bizarro is basically the evil Superman, the evil version of him, and he has pretty much the same powers and everything, but Bizarro's showing up, and apparently that's where the Justice League form. I mean, I just don't know what to say about this movie anymore.
So at this point, I think I've said this before, we just need to see the movie.
Man of Steel had a mixed reception. There was people that loved it, there were people that hated it. I thought it was okay. I didn't love it or hate it. I think it's a little long, and I think that the end battle, especially the end battle, is a 15-minute battle of Zod and Superman, almost like Spider-Man. Zod and Superman flying through buildings, just causing mass destruction to the city. But in this movie, they're introducing Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, possibly Green Lantern, according to that Reddit user, Flash, Cyborg, Lex Luthor. There's the Senator that's shown in the trailer. Doomsday's popping up. Bizarro, apparently. There's maybe Darkseid in a weird dream sequence. That's like 11 characters right there that this movie's going to introduce. And this is your second film. Like, I don't know what to say anymore about this.
I want to see it.
It's weird because no matter what kind of rumors come out about this movie, I'm still going to be at opening night to see it. So, I don't know. That's enough DC talk. We're going to end our news segment by covering probably the most surprising news story of the week. That there's a new Cloverfield movie coming out, Josh.
There is totally a new Cloverfield movie coming out, and they've been talking about this for years and years, and I've been wondering when Abrams was going to get around to produce it. And I thought, with Star Wars and Star Trek and him talking about wanting to do other things, I didn't think producing another Cloverfield sequel was going to be happening, but they dropped a trailer January 15th. It's the movie directed by Dan Trachtenberg. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, Dan. But it stars Mary Winstead, John Goodman, and John Gallagher Jr. 10 Cloverfield Lane.
You excited for it? You ready for it?
Absolutely, I'm ready for it. It's going to get to us in March. From what I understand, J.J. Abrams is calling it a, quote, blood relative, as monsters come in all different forms, or monsters can come in different forms.
I think we're kind of in a similar thought that it's not going to be about the monster anymore. Like, I think the phrase of monsters come in different sizes or shapes or whatever. The quote was that John Goodman's character is actually the monster in the movie, where he's taken these two other characters either hostage or he's just offered to help them through the tragedy that happened in Cloverfield, which I've not seen. So I want to. But I think Goodman's character is going to be the actual villain, and then there's a shot in the trailer where the girl runs upstairs and looks out the window, and she's just shocked. And I'm assuming that it's because it just looks fine out there. And so she's been wondering why she's been trapped down there for who knows how long. The most surprising for me about the trailer is the March release date. So I don't know how he can keep a movie under wraps for this amount of time and release the first trailer 2 months before.
Sure, it makes you wonder if this is like going to be more of like a festival film, but it's got John Goodman attached to it, so along with him and along with Mary Winstead. Yeah. Thank you for indulging me on that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's hard to really get a good grasp on what's happening and what the story is and what to expect. But we've gone for quite a bit amount of time on news. And even though we don't have a movie review or a top 5 list like we normally do, we're going to go through some Oscar nominations now, which were all released Thursday morning. And we're going to start off with Best Actor. So Best Actor nominations are Bryan Cranston for Trumbo, Matt Damon for The Martian, Leonardo DiCaprio for The Revenant, Michael Fassbender for Steve Jobs, and Eddie Redmayne for The Danish Girl. DiCaprio just won Best Actor for the Golden Globes. Are you thinking he's going to get his first Oscar?
I think he is, but I'm not a part of the Academy, and sometimes the Academy does things that most people don't understand. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say if DiCaprio doesn't get it, it's going to end up in the hands of Bryan Cranston for Trumbo.
Bold choice.
It sounds bold, but when you look at the whole subject matter from Trumbo and Cranston's performance in it, that was apparently Oscar-worthy because I sure the heck haven't seen it yet. It's about Hollywood, and it's about, sort of like this guy having his hands. I mean, do you think you said bold. Do you think that's really unlikely?
I feel like Cranston is the least likely to get it. I don't know why. I haven't seen Trumbo, but I hope DiCaprio gets it just because he kind of deserves one at this point in his career. But I've heard really good things about Fassbender and Steve Jobs, and I was a huge fan of Matt Damon in The Martian. I was really happy he got nominated.
Absolutely.
I hope it's DiCaprio. I think it will be Fassbender, But if I had it my way, it would be
Damon?
Matt Damon. And as far as a snub or somebody, I would have liked to see Michael B. Jordan get nominated for Creed. I thought that he was excellent as the lead role. But moving on to Best Actress, we have Cate Blanchett nominated for Carol, Brie Larson for Room, Jennifer Lawrence for Joy, Charlotte Rampling for 45 Years, and Saoirse Ronan for Brooklyn. Any of these stand out to you?
I wanted to go see Joy. I should have gone to see Joy. I will see it. Brie Larson and Cate Blanchett is good for 4 or 5 different ones, but
Yeah, I mean, Jennifer Lawrence won the Golden Globes, so that's normally a pretty good indication of who could win. Or, well, the Golden Globes is a different story because they split Best Actress and Best Actor into 2 different categories, a Best Drama and then a Best Musical or Comedy. So it's weird because according to the Golden Globes, Brie Larson won it for Best Drama, then Jennifer Lawrence won it for Best Comedy/Musical. So I think I go to either of those. I think it's going to go to Brie Larson. I haven't seen any of these movies. From what I've heard, Brie Larson gives an incredible performance in it. And I think Room is being received as a better movie, which I think is a big factor in this as well. Whereas Jennifer Lawrence gives a really good performance in a good movie.
sure. With a stacked cast as well.
Yeah.
No, not stacked.
De Niro and Cooper. Best Supporting Actor, however, nominees are Christian Bale for Big Short, Tom Hardy for Revenant, Mark Ruffalo for Spotlight, Mark Rylance for Bridge of Spies, and Sylvester Stallone for Creed. I just saw Spotlight, 2 days ago.
Lucky you.
So Mark Ruffalo was great. He was my favorite actor in the movie, so I'm really happy to see him get nominated. I love the movie in general. It's a weird movie to watch just because of, just to give a quick review of it. It makes you feel uncomfortable kind of looking at the church and stuff, which, I mean, I've grown up a Christian my whole life, so going to church this morning, recording on a Sunday, it's just like, I mean, it's not a Catholic church, so nothing that happened in Spotlight is happening at my church. But it's still a very weird thing. And Mark Ruffalo gives some really good lines about questioning the church and just how the movie's all about how basically the church has so much control over the city of Boston and all the scandals that have happened through the church. But it's really good. I'd recommend go seeing it. I hope he wins for Best Supporting. But I also hope Sylvester Stallone wins it.
I'm gonna say, how can you root against Sylvester Stallone getting the award? But I think if I haven't seen Spotlight, so I need to. I want to so badly. I think Tom Hardy and Christian Bale's performance in The Big Short was fantastic, but last man in, first guy out type of a deal. It's weird saying that about Christian Bale.
It is weird because I mentioned when I saw Spotlight the other night with some friends, we were talking about Oscar nominees, and we were talking about who we thought should have been in it, and I gave a name at the time that I thought should have been nominated for Best Supporting. I can't remember who it was now, but they were asking me who I would take off, and I said Christian Bale, and they were both kind of shocked that I would suggest Christian Bale not be nominated for an Oscar. But I mean, I thought he was good in The Big Short, just not an Oscar performance. I wouldn't be surprised if any of these guys won it, honestly, though. I haven't seen Bridge of Spies. It's the one on here I haven't seen. But I've heard Mark Rylance gives an incredible performance in the movie. So who do you think is going to win it again? Do you think Stallone?
Yeah, I chalked up Stallone. I can't. Voting against Stallone for his role in Creed is just...
Yeah. The person that I was thinking of taking Christian Bale off was Benicio del Toro in Sicario. He was insanely good and creepy in the movie, and I think if he was nominated, he would win. That's how good he is. So he was like a huge snub for me personally that he wasn't on the list. Moving on to Best Supporting Actress, we got Jennifer Jason Leigh for The Hateful Eight, movie we just reviewed. Rooney Mara for Carol, Rachel McAdams for Spotlight, Alicia Vikander for The Danish Girl, and Kate Winslet for Steve Jobs. Out of these, I would give it to... I haven't seen Carol or Danish Girl or Steve Jobs, so it's hard to really say what those people with the performances they give in those. But Kate Winslet won it for the Golden Globes. I thought Jennifer Jason Leigh was great in Hateful Eight, so I think she should win it.
Mm-hmm.
The weird thing for me personally is Alicia Vikander getting nominated for the Danish Girl because I haven't seen it, but she was so good in Ex Machina. I thought she should be nominated for that, and if she was nominated for Ex Machina, I would pick her to win for that. What about you?
Kate Winslet.
I would probably agree with Kate Winslet, but personally, I like to see Jennifer Jason Leigh get the win for it. For animated film, nominees include Anomalisa, Boy and the World, Inside Out, Shaun the Sheep, and When Marnie Was There. For me, this is a no-brainer. Inside Out, no questions asked. For you?
I agree 100%. I don't know if there's any argument in any of these other ones.
I've heard some pretty good things about Shaun the Sheep, surprisingly, even though there's not a single word spoken in the movie. But Inside Out for me is the clear front runner, and if it doesn't win, I will be shocked. I actually think it should have been nominated for Best Picture, which it wasn't, unfortunately. But Inside Out's it's my second favorite movie of the year. It's just incredible. Moving on to sound editing, we have Mad Max: Fury Road, Sicario, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, The Martian, and The Revenant.
Star Wars.
It's hard. It's not that we're just Star Wars fans. It's honestly Star Wars has great sound editing and the use of whether it's the TIE Fighter sounds or the lightsaber going up, blasters, whatever it is, the editing for it's all great. I can't really. We've seen all these, but Star Wars is the one where the sound really stands out for me personally. Film editing. Got The Big Short, Mad Max: Fury Road, The Revenant, Spotlight, and Star Wars: Force Awakens again.
Star Wars.
I think it's either The Revenant or Mad Max for editing. I think The Revenant's the front runner just because the way that Inarritu, just the way he shot it and the way that there's kind of the lack of cuts and editing. I mean, that's an accomplishment in and of itself where you have to edit a movie less just because you have such great material.
I think you mentioned that the timing was hard to track throughout that movie.
It could potentially pose a problem for it. But I think other than that, it is surprising. I love Star Wars, but I was kind of surprised it got an editing nomination. So maybe that's actually the front runner. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see in a couple of weeks. We got original score. Nominees are Bridge of Spies, Carol, The Hateful Eight, Sicario, and Star Wars: Force Awakens again. Is this a question?
It is a question because The Hateful Eight, give it to Star Wars. But the soundtrack is fantastic. John Williams did a really good job and is just that good.
Yeah. We haven't seen Carol or Bridge of Spies, but Hateful Eight, Sicario, and Star Wars definitely for me seemed like the top three, even if I would have seen the other two movies. And I wouldn't be mad if any of them win. I have a hard time believing that Star Wars will get the win just because it's a big motion picture that the Oscars don't normally like, except for like Lord of the Rings or something like that. Personally, if I had to rank it, I would give it if who I'd want to win, I'd want it to be Star Wars, then Sicario, then The Hateful Eight. Sicario is just like this weird, booming, haunting score that I really liked. Yeah, it was. Next, we got visual effects. We got Ex Machina, Mad Max: Fury Road, The Martian, The Revenant, and Star Wars: Force Awakens. Who you got?
All of those are ones that I said that you could give it to. But then, when I look at that bear attack, like that's the only thing to me that really put it over the top. But
I think it should go to Ex Machina.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way they did I don't know what the AI, I guess you would call her. Just the peeling away the skin and her head and everything was crazy. It looked so real. I would have, if they would have told me that was an actual real life robot and technology had advanced that much, I would have bought it. Next, we got adapted screenplay. Nominees are The Big Short, Brooklyn, Carol, The Martian, and Room. For me, I would probably. I've heard The Martian isn't that accurate in terms of events that play out to the book, but I've heard that, I haven't read the book, but that the way a lot of it is internal thinking in the book, whereas in the movie they translate it into him doing like the vlogs, which I loved.
The book it's not unreadable. It's a hard read, and it's almost like you're reading poetry at some points throughout it, and that's why as soon as The Martian got nominated, I really think that's what's gonna end up winning. But I don't think it took something that already existed and made it that much better.
All right, we'll move on to original screenplay. Got Bridge of Spies, Ex Machina, Inside Out, Spotlight, and Straight Outta Compton. I think it's Ex Machina. I hope so, at least. What about you?
It's Ex Machina or it's Inside Out.
Agreed. Those would be my top two. We got to move a little quickly just because of time reasons. And I'm guessing the last two are going to be some good discussions. But Best Cinematography nominees: Carol, Hateful Eight, Mad Max Fury Road, The Revenant, and Sicario. I think the top two are definitely Revenant and Sicario for me. But if there was a dark horse in it, could see Mad Max shocking and getting a win for it. What about you?
It's gonna be The Revenant, just because like everything that was done with that movie was something that hasn't really been tried before, or at least not lately within my lifetime. So it's unique enough that it's gonna propel. I think it's gonna propel it right to the win.
Moving on to directing. We got Adam McKay for The Big Short, George Miller for Mad Max Fury Road, Alejandro Inarritu for The Revenant, Lenny Abramson for Room, and Tom McCarthy for Spotlight. Some people I was kind of surprised weren't on the list were Ryan Coogler for Creed, and there was one other one that was a big, I cannot think of what it was. But of this list, I would say that it's going to be Inarritu, just because I think the Academy loves him. But I could also see, I've heard some pretty good things about the way Abramson does Room. Ridley Scott for The Martian. I was surprised he wasn't nominated.
Yeah, that is odd, because it feels like The Martian's popped up on every one of these categories, for something that it's, wow.
Yeah, I think Adam McKay is probably the most surprising nominee, but the way he did The Big Short and having those celebrity cameos explain things, that was all him with his directing choice, and those were some of the best parts of the movie, honestly.
Yeah, it was the callback to his the Anchorman movie and Talladega Nights and things like that, where you're just like, oh hey, the guy's, it's still Adam McKay at heart.
Yeah.
But I think you're right with your analyst that The Revenant it's got a meteor, it's on a meteoric rise right now, and I think it's going to grab it as well. But I don't want to count out George Miller for Mad Max Fury Road.
I would agree that Inarritu is probably the favorite, but I could honestly see any of them winning, which is great. Best Picture, final category, and then we'll wrap it up. We got The Big Short, Bridge of Spies, Brooklyn, Mad Max Fury Road, The Martian, The Revenant, Room, and Spotlight. Most surprising for me is Bridge of Spies, even though it is Spielberg. I've heard it's a good movie, but that's not great. So I was surprised that got a Best Picture nominee and not Creed. I don't know how. I thought Creed was excellent. I know a lot of people that think it's one of the best movies of the year, so how it didn't make a top 8 list is surprising. But that's probably the biggest. I was kind of actually surprised that Hateful Eight wasn't also on there, just because it is. Totally blanking on his name right now, which I cannot believe. But
Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, Tarantino. Yeah. Thank you. That they left off Tarantino, but if I had to put a favorite, it would probably be Revenant or The Room. Personally, my favorite of those was The Martian. What about you?
The Revenant to win the Best Picture, but I can definitely see Spotlight easily in those slots as well.
I could see those winning. I hope I'm wrong and The Martian does actually win it, but we'll have to wait and see. But that's the end of this podcast. We're not 100% positive when we'll return. There's not really great movies coming out over the next week, so we might not be back with you guys. You guys will be hearing this on the 19th, so there might not be a podcast for you on the 26th, but if not, there will definitely be one on the 2nd. The 29th weekend. There's some pretty good movies coming out, which we'll definitely see at least one of them and get a review out for it. But if we will update you throughout the process of whether or not we'll return. And for updates on the podcast, movie news, and more, you can follow us on Twitter at Friends and Film. You can follow me personally on Twitter at Coops_hoops.
And don't forget about me, Josh Straley, who you can follow on Twitter at StraleyStrong.
Yeah, and if you are listening to this on YouTube or SoundCloud or even iTunes now, feel free to subscribe to us, share it, like it, tell other people about it. Just be sure to give us good reviews, give us thumbs up, likes, retweets, anything to help us grow. We're doing some polls on Twitter every couple of days, so if you see those, be sure to interact with them. Any final thoughts?
No, thank you guys again for listening, and have a great week.
Yeah, thanks again for me as well. Thanks for tuning in again to the Friends and Film podcast. And before we return in either next week or 2 weeks, make sure to watch some movies.